አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን።
አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔም ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የኔ ነው። አደባባይ ሚዲያ የሁላችንም ነው። የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ? Do your parents watch አደባባይ ሚዲያ? Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ።
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is Adebabay Media's Your Digest program, and my name is Tsewa'e, and I'll be your host for today. Today, I have invited two guests to talk to us about current events in Ethiopia that are currently grabbing the attention of the international media and those that are not. I'd like to invite everyone to share this conversation with your loved ones and your community, and to stay with us.
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back, everyone. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about current events in Ethiopia. For many years now, we have witnessed tribalists disturbing the livelihoods of citizens in Ethiopia. Currently, the conversation of me, I, and mine is seeming to take over the conversation over us and ours. And the suffering of one is being compared and deemed less or greater than the other. So what should we do, and what is going on? For this conversation, we have invited two guests that are not necessarily strangers to our media, the co-founders of Peace and Justice for Ethiopia, Betlehem Demisay and Hermela Mesfin. I'll invite them back. Thank you again for both of you for making the time to come here, and welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. I guess let's start. What have you guys been doing since we had talked last? What has been going on in Ethiopia? If Hermela, you can start, and then Betlehem, you could kind of give us a quick summary, and then we'll go a deep dive into the specifics.
Sure. So I believe the last time we discussed, politics or what's going on in Ethiopia and kind of the current ground on what it's looking like back home was, I believe, August. So honestly, a lot has happened since then. All the way from what's going on in Tigray, the war in Tigray, to the Mycadra Massacre, those of Amhara descent also being killed in the Walaga region, and kind of things heating up from time to time as the months went by. So today we're here to kind of debrief on what is currently going on, what has been going on within the past couple of months, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Betty?
Yes, like she said, definitely the war on Tigray region, as well as the continuing genocide of Amhara people, and new information that recently that we've also noticed is that the displacement of Gurages due to clash between territories, and also in Konso region, there's displacement and of course continued deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really overwhelming to keep track of it and just really see what's been going on. Maybe if we could start with the war in Tigray, and I think the most important thing for us when we're talking about this is really being able to differentiate between the party and the people. So can you, Bethlehem, tell us a bit about like how you can differentiate between TPLF and the people of Tigray, and how we can move forward in understanding the war in Tigray right now?
I think what we see in the Tigray region, with people having a hard time differentiating the party or the politicians from the people, has been, it's not new. It's been happening for the last 30, 40 years since ethnic federalism has been implemented. And right now, for the war and the war during the war or aftermath of it, I think what we have to remember is that at the end of the day, these are Ethiopians, these are human beings, these are actual people that are being affected by the actions of politicians. And a lot of the times, I would say that the conversations that we have at home in front of our children or in our communities, that we have to be specific. For example, when we talk about, this people did this to our people, instead of saying, your people did bad thing to my people, we have to differentiate and say, like, the government that claimed to represent your people did this to my people. And that I think it starts with conversation and making sure that our language changes. A lot of times that we have seen now during the war is that a lot of people had hard time sympathizing or listening to the Tigray people when they were speaking out and saying that, that people should speak up for them because they're women being raped and a lot of people are getting killed and displaced. And a lot of people had a hard time differentiating that because they were so stuck on the politicians that have dominated Ethiopia for the last 30 years. And so I would say the first thing is through conversation, we have to understand that our language, when we say like Tagaru people versus TPLF, we can't just use that interchangeably. I think it starts with language.
To build on that, Hermela, we see, right, this is not something that people are just coming up with. We see that people that are really strong supporters of TPLF are also the ones that seem to be strongly, sharing what's going on in Tigray and such. And I think there is that, because there's that misunderstanding, it's kind of, people are having a hard time to sympathize and really understand that war is really a brutal thing, regardless of where it's happening and who it's happening to. How do we move forward, even, looking at the social media posts and the synonymity of even those people like TPLF themselves saying we are the same as the people of Tigray?
So basically, I think I just want to kind of continue off of what Betty already said, is that I think the real issue starts where people are struggling with differentiating like the party with its people, or the party with the ethnic group itself. And, we hear, I've heard a lot of people actually say, hey, at the end of the day, if we pick to not differentiate that and make that one claim, then, or like one, the same thing, then that shouldn't be your concern right now. But actually, it really is. And I think this issue isn't just a matter of like TPLF and the difference between TPLF and Tigray, but also like I think for people, we got to understand that like TPLF does not equal Tigray, and that the Ethiopian government, or the Ethiopian like army forces and the militia, they do not represent Ethiopia. At the end of it's like it doesn't equal Ethiopia, not necessarily not represent, but it doesn't equal Ethiopia. And I think that's where all of this kind of stems from, where some people will be like, hey, just because the Ethiopian government has done this. I hate Ethiopia, or I don't claim myself as Ethiopian anymore. And I think we got to come back to understand, like, at the end of the day, a land isn't what it's called without its people. So Ethiopia isn't Ethiopia without the people it withholds. Whatever ethnic group it is that you do claim you're from or claim it, you see above, beyond the fact that you're Ethiopian, we cannot forget and kind of put aside the fact that at the end of the day, we all stem from one land. Maybe different sections of it, but it's all one land. So you can't just deny, being from that land just because the government has done so and so, or the militia has done so and so. And so I think kind of this all stems back to putting aside politics and then putting aside people and just innocent civilians to the side. Those are two completely different things. And as for your question, moving forward, I think that's kind of where, like I said, that's really where I see the issue is at. And that's where we would need to backtrack to and kind of clear that up, as whatever hatred you're feeling right now towards what's happened within the past 27 years, 30 years, or even plus for many right now, you got to understand that, maybe that was the government that did so and so, or that did this to you, but not the people. We may say TPLF did this for this long, but the Tigray people have nothing to do with this, or not everyone at least. So the moment we kind of separate that, I think then is when humanity starts coming in and say, hey, I'm crying about my Amhara brothers and sisters dying every day. And the reason why I'm crying for that is because they're humans. They're innocent humans that are just being killed and slaughtered like animals for no reason whatsoever, but the fact that they're from that specific portion of the land. And so then you think, hey, the Tigray people are also going through the same thing. Yeah, it's war, but it's also innocent people dying there. So I care just as much as I do about the Amhara people, for the Tigray people, for the Oromo people, for whatever region it is, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do want to add that in order to, like, we talk about how does the government represent the people? Ethiopian people have never chosen their government. We've always been, elections are always rigged, or there's, always chaos during election time. And how can we say that, the government is the people when people have never elected, or the government has never truly represented the people? And so knowing that, baseline, we can also, I do understand your point. There are people who have been in pain, and there are people who have shared, like, my family died because of TPLF, they did this, did this. And that pain is real, and we're not here to be like, we should ignore that or forget that. That's something that we have to talk about, and we have to have solutions and discussions and actual policies to make sure that this never happens again. But that doesn't mean that we deny the pain of the Tigray people currently, because that would just, we can't keep doing this. Like, if we deny each other's pain, there will never be a solution, because they won't be able to listen to you and about your problems if you've never gonna listen to them. So I would say it starts with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the minute we decide at least to put a name in front of a person that's dying to justify whatever it is that we're trying to justify, or the minute we deny each other's pain, is really the minute we're going to lose our humanity, right? Everything that we fought against in the last few years, especially when we'll talk about ethnic federalism in a little bit. But when we're discussing that, really the minute we deny the pain of other people is a minute we lose our humanity, right? Regardless of who's doing the killing, I think death itself is a disgrace for Ethiopia, for us, for citizens. And just being able to say that, it should not be a controversy, right? It should just be like, yes, people should not die. And it shouldn't have any reason as to why they're dying, or we shouldn't be able to say, well, they had it coming, or, whatever it is that we're seeing these days with all kinds of ethnic differences that we, the clashes that we see. And it just really at the heart of it is, like you said, is, are we losing our humanity when we are justifying death, right? We're getting to that point where we're justifying death. So if we discuss that, what is going on in Tigray? I think there's a lot that's going on, and there's a lot that, might be true, might be false, but we know there's a lot of pain that's going on, and that we could definitely verify. So what is going on in Tigray right now?
Okay, do you want me to go?
Yeah, oh, please.
We know that there have been more than 100,000 have fled into Sudan, and even in the region itself, there's starvation, and women are being raped in refugee camps, but also in the Tigray region. They have said that a lot of women came out, and they said that it's by Eritrean and Amhara militants or the government, the Ethiopian government soldiers, and we know that that's been a fact. As for there's some misinformation, are people using some of these deaths and some of these rape cases and things that are happening in Tigray for their own political agenda? Yes, because that's how politicians move. They magnify or they try to manipulate the news in order to be like, we're gonna save you from this, to the Tigray people. But that's been true for all fronts. I think this war has been used to justify the political actions of a lot of politicians, and right now we see as like people have forgotten like these are actual people. Like it just became numbers. More than 100,000 fleeing to Sudan. A lot of people needing medical assistance, not having access to aid. All of those things have just been kind of like ignored, where because people are using it as like, it's just a numbers game. Oh, you have, this region has a lot more, so let's focus on this. Or, well, their people did this to me, you know what I mean? And it goes back to the first thing we talked about. So for a fact, we know that is happening so far. Right now, JP4 is more focused about, ways to aid and trying to access aid and local grassroots organizations and things like that. But also making sure that we do fact check everything, because there have been a lot of misinformation, and that's the last thing we wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hermela, do you have anything to add to this?
I think she said it very well. We've gotten to a point, like she said, where we're comparing deaths. And I think I saw this one quote, actually, I don't remember where exactly I saw it on, but somebody posted it, and it said, hey, like we're all sitting here suffering and eating off of the fruits of what's been planted, which is the division within all of us, and to claim your ethnic group above your country. But at least let's not go ahead and use that same method for when we're addressing the deaths that's currently going on in the country. I think that's very important, because hey, we're all sitting here complaining, saying we got divided, this happened, this went down, but we're also sitting here justifying what they're doing, or the means that they're using to kind of separate us, even with the deaths that are going on. We're all suffering the same pain of losing somebody. We're all suffering the same, we're all going through the same thing as for like mourning and grieving over dead people. But somehow we found a way to even divide that and say my pain is stronger than yours because so-and-so. And I think that's like, very, it's sad, honestly, that we've gotten to a point where we can justify certain deaths and say these were wrongfully done instead. And so I think for the most of it, she's kind of explained what's going on. There is the rape going on within the country. There's, displacement, a lot of displacement happening, hunger strikes, just a lot that's going on. But I think one thing that we do got to remember in all of this is that as we're amplifying these voices, to always stay truthful, no matter what, because it's the sad truth, but if you misrepresent or misinform the people about one specific individual that you've put out there as a victim, then really it can silence every other real victim that's gone through just many things. And so I think just for all of us to be mindful that when you're releasing information about what's currently going on, because rape is a very huge thing. That's not something we're just gonna walk over or say, yeah, it's war, it happens. No, that should never happen. And so don't be quick to try and justify that. And also do not be quick to release stories that you're not 100% sure of. Just kind of be mindful of what's going on. And like she said, it's.
I think in war as well, we forget that the victims are humans because we give them a different name, and by any means necessary becomes the way in which we communicate their stories, and that's not acceptable. I think we should give dignity to the victims and actually do the due diligence of sharing their true and honest story, so that we're not overwhelming everybody that's listening to us with false stories that make us say, well, how do I know the next thing is true, right? So that being really, really important, really respecting and giving dignity to the victims of, the ones that are fleeing the country, the ones that are, faced the trauma of rape and anything really that we haven't heard yet or we have heard already. Just being really mindful of those victims and really valuing their stories it goes a long way into healing our community and really creating that understanding of, yes, this was as traumatic as everybody is saying. It doesn't make it small or big because politicians are making it to be however and giving it justification for whatever, right? By the end of the day, like you guys said, none of us chose our leaders, and the fact that the leaders decide to fight and the citizens are the ones that are paying this price is very saddening. And not necessarily to move on from this, but another thing that we also witnessed was, the Mycadra Massacre and the ongoing genocide of the Amhara people in Ethiopia. And if you guys could just add a bit more into that and what I know you guys have been sharing quite a lot about that information as well. What is going on and where is this going on at? And Hermela, go ahead and start.
The Mycadra massacre, actually, initially we were told was it kind of started off with the number 300 people were dead, then it kind of moved up, and now we're even hearing I just saw a report yesterday where it's saying the damages from all of that and the deaths were actually over 1,500 people, which is a huge chunk for the world to be so quiet about. I think this kind of leads us into how international, news outlets really decided to just skip over this huge portion of history where people were just killed in cold blood and just walked over as if nothing happened within the country. And then to see really, again, I think even these news outlets are amplifying what we said earlier as well as to whose pain is higher and whose is lower by doing so. We've seen news sources such as big as CNN speak on what's currently going on within the country with the Tigray war and really on that basis. And we've seen them lack doing so for the same people, basically, because we're all Ethiopians, the same people from the same country, when they were just killed in cold blood, not even out of a announced war. So I think that was a huge portion of what had happened in Ethiopia that was completely skipped over and not really talked about by the people. And I think that's the huge issue that we got going on here. Even news outlets are really amplifying one voice and leaving the other behind. And by saying this, we're not saying give this side less time, but rather put this one up to get the same amount of energy and attention that it deserves. Because, hey, it's people there and it's people here too. We're all talking about humans. And so I think that's kind of my ground on all of that. I think Betty will expand a little bit on that too.
So for the Mycadra, a lot of the victims were day laborers. So these are ordinary people doing their daily jobs. They had no connection to TPLF or EDF. And the victims have stated that those who did this are loyal to TPLF, and a lot of the victims are non-Tigrayan. The Amhara Regional Party did an investigation and found that a lot of the ID cards showed that these people were mostly Amhara, and it was innocent civilians killed by everyday equipment. So it was not anything that's advanced, and there was a lot of people that died, as she states. But this is ethnically motivated, and again, this also pushes the idea that Amharas, and it's against Amhara people specifically. for us JP4E, we categorize this as a genocide because it was identity based and it's mass, basically. Like she said, we started off at 500, but we found that it could reach up to 1,000 now. And it's perpetrated by people who support TPLF or who are loyal to them.
Yeah, I think with that one, Getty's Images also went to the site and, you know, did a photo journal. And he also found out that most of the victims were men. They were handpicked and killed. So it was interesting to see that there's also a gender side to this genocide that we don't talk about. And as far as who's covering this, I think it really speaks volumes to what motivation was there for CNN even to cover one thing and not cover the other, or for whoever is sharing this information to CNN to say whose pain is more valuable than mine, right? That conversation that we just had, like, is it really about the care of human beings being, you know, dying, or is it about, you know, highlighting a specific group or a specific idea that you think people would like or are attention worthy as far as what the news media chooses to cover? And also, I think this kind of makes it really difficult to kind of look over everything else because it's ongoing. So I know about a month ago there was an issue in Walaga, and there's been an issue in Benishangul Gumuz for months and months now. I haven't kept track of how many even there, and that was the same thing where people were being asked for an ID before they were killed, right? This is specifically targeted to specific groups. That's why we keep on calling it genocide, not because they're dying only, but because they are specifically being targeted based on who they are, identity that they cannot change, identity that their ID can show, right? So that's where I'm going with that. But are there other places that, because I see now a lot of it, like you guys mentioned, that, you know, if we talk about Amara genocide, right, at one point people say, oh, why aren't you not talking about, you know, what's happening in Tigray? And if you talk about in Tigray, they say, well, why aren't you not talking about what's going on in you know, whatever other region that there is? And there just seems to be this competition of like, mine needs to get highlighted before everybody else's. How do we get away from that? How do we really truly equally value that what's going on in Ethiopia? We have, you know, big enough heart to really accept and see everybody the way they are and they're suffering for what it is.
I think, you know, this really stems from the fact that, like you said earlier, Hiwat, as well, we're labeling like certain groups with certain names. Like, for example, for the Amhara group, we've seen the usage of the word neftenga as a very negative term for like to represent the people. And actually, I was just seeing a video earlier today as well of how they've now started to label the houses, like the doors of the houses of people that come from the Amhara descent and that or have Amhara ethnic backgrounds. And so that I would say for sure is what we consider genocide, because not only are you now you know, being killed for being this ethnic group, but now you're having your homes labeled Neftenga and Amara in order to you know, make it easier for them to kill you. And it's really we've mentioned this before as well. This is the same tactic that they used in the Rwanda genocide as well, where they would call the people that they're attacking cockroaches, which would make it easier for you to go and shoot something. In your head, you're thinking, okay, cockroach, you know, a simple name, not human being, not a person, not a living, breathing person just like you, but rather this like kind of idealized I would say like a target board, you know, this target board that you don't think you're now taking a life, that you don't think you're doing this and this, but rather like as if it's a way to sacrifice, or as if it's the sheep to sacrifice for you to get your power up there. So I think we got to come back to remove that. You know, I think the term neftenga on its own should not be okay to be used. The same way, you know, the N-word within the African American community was banned off. I think that should be the same way. People should not be allowed to use that to identify you. And then if you're an Amhara person that, you know, claims that now because that's been said to you so much, and that because you've been you know, demonetized or whatever it is, you've been belittled by people using that term towards you, then that's fine. But that term itself should not be something that's okay to use within the country or during a war, especially because that just that's being used as a tactic to just dehumanize these people, the victims, and to not really understand that Amharas everywhere are being killed for absolutely no reason at all. And this isn't, again, like you said, just an Amhara issue. Tigray people are dying. We've seen Oromo people dying as well. Like she said, Gurages are being displaced. Just this is not just going to stop with Amharas. That's what we got to understand, is that if we let this dehumanizing manner continue with these people, we have no guarantee whatsoever for the rest to not come after your ethnic group just because they now feel like they deserve the time and power, or they deserve the place and power. So being open about that and understanding, if you want your pain to be understood, you got to be able to sit down and listen to the other side, and to not just jump off of what your parents or your grandparents told you is the right way to go, and then kind of falsifying history and you know how they say, there's a saying that if you repeat a lie so many times to yourself, it becomes the truth. I think that's really what's been going on within just so many different groups and political groups and ethnic mindseted people, is that like you convince yourself that a certain history is what it is, and now you just can't let go of it, and you're blindly going off of that, kind of using that as a way to dismiss the facts and the reality. So I think just working on checking ourselves on using such terms and having the ability to dismiss others' pain without wanting to listen.
Absolutely. Beatty?
To go back to like your question of like, how do we, you said like, how do we make sure that we're not trumping over each other? Like my cause is first. I think the first thing is transparency within the government is not really open. Like people don't know what they're hearing is true. So it's very hard for them to, they feel like they have to advocate. They feel like they have to speak up because everybody else seems like, they're silent. And I 100% get that. Back in July, we had a similar situation where we felt like everyone in the world was, especially Ethiopians and in the diaspora and within the country, were ignoring what's happening. And it felt very isolating. And so that's the same thing happening in the Tigray region, but also within the Amhara genocide, is that they feel like if nobody's going to cover it, I have to advocate for my people. And if anybody else disagrees or tries to silence me, then they're against me. And so that stems from the lack of transparency within the government, but also as a result of the media as well. The media is very biased. There's different channels and different YouTube streaming services with like specific to ethnicity. Like we have come down to having certain ethnicities only watching certain channels, and so they hear that point of view, and according to them, they're the ones that are being attacked, and everybody else is living peacefully. So everybody is against you. That's what people consume, and so it's very isolating, and a lot of people are in their own world. They think that everybody else is against me, and these people are ignoring it. The only people that care are my people, and the politician that's basically just using those people for their political gain. And so that's where it stems from. It's and it's very logical, and I sympathize with the people who do feel that, and they do have every right to speak about their people. But what I would say, and I think a lot of us could agree, is that just because we talked about one doesn't mean it makes the other any less. And every time you talk about the Tigray genocide, like the Tigray war, you're being called TPLF supporter and all of that. And when you're talking about the Amhara genocide or the killings in the Oromo region of Amharas, then you're basically you're a Naftanya and you support I don't know how they would meaning Selassie and things like that. And if you speak up about the Oromo protests and and talk about like the actual issues that they brought up that is actually should be heard, then you're a Jawar supporter. And that's why people have a hard time speaking up, because they're like, well, I don't want to be labeled that, so I'll rather just advocate for my people, and just everybody else I'm gonna ignore. So I'd say, to summarize, the first thing is government, the second is media, that we have, we have bubbles. And the third, I will say that even among ourselves, we pointed at each other every time we speak about anything. So a lot of people would rather just stick to their own, I guess I would say, than, speak up because they don't want to be labeled a certain thing.
Yeah, and the labeling is very interesting because even when people are told like don't use the word Neftenya on a media when you're talking about Amhara people, for example, and they say why not? That's their name, right? And you tell them like no, this is what's being used to kill people, and they won't want to listen to it. They're just like, but that's their name. And for me, that's such a baffling thing because maybe I'm coming from a very Western mindset. But when someone says, like you, Beiti or Helmala, if you decide today, I don't want to be called Beiti or Helmala, my name is something else, I should have, the decency to respect that. That's just one individual. But when a whole group of people are being killed by the name that you're calling them, and when people are asking you, please do not use this word, your justification is, why not? That's their name. It really is a lack of humanity that we've been talking about, that mine is better, my ideas are better, what I think, what I feel is more valid than everybody else's, and the way I'm going to get to what I want is by any means necessary, regardless of who's going to get hurt in the way, as long as I get to clear my way out. And it's just really painful to see because even, with the one or nothing kind of politics that we run in Ethiopia, where, yes, I could see that there are some issues that in Oromia that needs to be fixed, that people have legitimate reasons as to what they're saying and doing. And also not being able to say, no, that nobody should be killed for it, right? Nobody should be killed for that. And the same with, I should definitely be able to say, things are happening in Tigray that should never have happened. That should never have happened. And that does not make me, a TPLF lover, or that does not make me, and then if I say, there's something wrong with TPLF, that does not make me, a hater of Tigray people. Yeah. And just like really having that difficulty of separating the person that's leading, the people themselves, and the politics that's being run. And as much as we claim to hate ethnic federalism, we seems to really, really abide by the rules of it. And it's really tragic to really see it. But I guess in that sense, like, how do we, knowing that all these things are maybe one of the issues with being ethnic federalism, how do we understand ourselves then away from that mindset? Basically.
I just want to add that the classification is also part of that, like how you say, like, you don't want to be called, or people don't want to be called Neftanya, but they're being called that. That's why we label this as a genocide, is because the first step of genocide is classification, then then the rest comes later. But that's been happening for so long that this is just the final of it. But going back to your question. Sorry, what was your question?
As much as we claim to hate federalism, right, we really seem to abide by the rules of federalism so much, at least a majority of us that are online, making any kind of suggestion. So how do we really, for those of us that really claim to hate it, but without knowing so, play into that hand, how do we prevent that? How do we prevent ourselves, or how do we catch ourselves when we do that?
I think the first step is the system has to be gone itself, because when you're reminded every day, for example, having your ethnicity on your ID card, that is a reminder every day that like you're classified, and if anybody else sees it, whether meaning to or not, they're automatically going to assume things about you, whether you're subconsciously or unconsciously. And so I would say that the first thing is to get rid of it systematically, and by policy and implementing new system where people are represented based on regions, or based on the fact that, based on class, which is not talked about often, and instead of, ethnicity, and that's where it starts. And the second, I think it's going to take a long time, because this has been in our mind for, 3-4 decades. Our parents are influenced. Now we are influenced, and I'm sure the younger generation is already influenced as well. We have kids saying and doing, very, crazy things at their young age, and being very like anti certain ethnicity. And so I would say it takes time to unlearn, because what the ethnic federalism has done will cripple us for a very long time. And I'm not going to make it, sugar coated and say, oh, we can get rid of it. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of, grassroots work. It's going to take a lot of discussions. It's going to take a lot of policies to be made by politicians. But I would say the first step is to get rid of the system, but also have the people represent, have politicians that truly represent the people, and we have, being able to elect them, or and also having like free and fair elections, and also freedom to express our thoughts without fear of retaliation. And so I would say that would be the beginning, and then the rest, I guess, through organizing and also discussing, and also even while we teach in schools, the historic accuracy of everything. It has to be all systematic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hermela?
I agree with everything she said, all the way from the IDs, needing to stop classifying, your ethnic group that you're from. And I think the way I see it is that it doesn't necessarily mean, I think a lot of people, whenever we say like, don't use the term Neftenga, or, remove like your ethnic group from your ID and all of that, I think a lot of people see it as like you're trying to strip away their identity, but you're really not. I think what we're trying to achieve here is like to kind of bring back that oneness and that like nationalism back into the country, because hey, it's been a long time in the making for it to be destroyed. Like she said, our parents are biased in one way or another. And so are we, I'm sure, at this point. And then it comes down to our children. And I think this is really going to be a lot of work that needs to be done, all the way from, I've said this before as well, starting off with, for example, we have a lot of schools within Addis Ababa that are able to provide multiple languages beyond Amharic and English. And that to me is very shaming to look at, just because, yes, you're out here expanding, the language options for students to take, but how are you not going to include your own country's various different languages within that curriculum that you're able to provide those lessons to students? I think that's where all of this, and I think, all of this stems beyond like what we see here in front of our eyes with an Ethiopian people fighting within themselves, but also I think the white sources are in this. I think the Western world has something to do with all of this. The way we think they're higher or better and try to measure up to their standards and their way of leadership. I think that's really what's causing so much issues to our country. Ethiopia is unique, has always had its own different leading way, and in its own way that the government and the people are set up. It's religiously based for the most of it, really, and kind of mixing that up and modernizing isn't bad, but just to what extent and what are we willing to leave behind to get there? And I think the one thing that we left behind is like our unity, our pride and our joy in our country, and our nationalism and the way we feel about our own country. We've been so busy trying to like catch up with the rest of the world that we forgot ourselves. So by like the first step, I think should be education based. Like you need to remove or even have whatever, whether it's French, whether it's Spanish, whatever languages that Ethiopia is currently providing in their schools, still have that, but at least give people the opportunity to be able to like learn their own country's languages, start off with having field trips. This is like long-term plans, but like start off with having field trips and not so much so fantasizing to like take kids out of the country, but also like rather like something within the country. I know there's been a lot of kids, especially within the Addis Ababa community that have traveled to like other countries or like border, even if it's like the smallest trips. But I know a lot of people that have never gone to see Aksum or that have never gone to see, Lalibela, and then just so many different things. And that's just like the beginning portion of the history that we have. So kind of, I think all of that starts off from a young age. So if you're taking children to field trips to see this huge historical place of their country where their country won a war or did this or did that, I think that like from young age builds that like country love within the children, and then kind of grow off, like I said, offering those languages. And then like Betty said, continuing on to remove like, ethnic groups or labels from your ID cards, because that does not label you. You are Ethiopian, and that's really how it should be. It should be based on your warada, or even if that's going to create an issue, then just create some code, to like be able to identify them, only you as like a government worker. And I think, for that, she's said most of it, but I just think it's the little things that we could change in the history books and in the way we teach the children that can really end up resulting in a country where we're like really federal, with the federal mindset, the ethnic federalism mindset is really out the way. And we're all thinking, hey, this is my country. I want to do everything for it.
Absolutely. And I think also, I not necessarily speak to, for you guys, but when we say that we don't want, this kind of federalism, it doesn't necessarily mean like, let's just squish everybody's culture into one and force, people into one culture. It really does mean let's find a way to celebrate everybody's culture. Let's find a way to learn everybody's culture, and let's find a way to share all the resources that Ethiopia has. So we're not scrambling to get power. We're not giving, tyrants an opportunity to kill us off, right? Because, I don't know, there was this thing Obang shared one time talking about, there's three kinds of people in a country: the idiots, the tribalists, and the citizens. And it really feels like right now the idiots and the tribalists are the ones running the country, and the citizens are the ones that are paying for it. For me, really, like my mini, check to see, like, have I fallen into this ethnic tribalism sense as well? Because I do catch myself in some things, because that is my training. Is that, if I'm outraged by something that is happening in the northern part of Ethiopia, and if I see something that's happening in the southern parts and say, well, that's not mine, I hope somebody shares it, then that's when I catch myself, okay, why do I not think it is as valuable as the rest of it? And I think that's what we're struggling with as well, to say, okay, I'm going to share mine because I could really speak to this, but I can't speak about this, so let me just leave it alone. And because, again, there's a lot of fear, like we've mentioned before, about being labeled and such, but I think we really have to be comfortable in fighting this war, even if it's online, to just say, I'm going to highlight everything that's happening in Ethiopia, the good and the bad. And also really to get away from that idea of like, Ethiopia is the greatest place in the world. For me, it is, right? There's a lot of beauty in it, but right now it's a lot of pain that we're having to deal with, right? It's exhausting to have your coworkers reach out to you and say, hey, is your family okay? Like, I just want to work. Like, I don't want this kind of image to be, reflected on me. And it's exhausting right now to be Ethiopian. But it is, it's not just the goods that we're after, it's the bad as well. And really finding that, vision of Ethiopia that works for everyone. Is my dream, along with everything you guys said, because right now it feels like I'm learning Ethiopia based on who's dying in what region or what zone. And that is very unfortunate. Like, I have never heard of a place called Mycadra until people died in it. And that's very, like, I felt so bad, not only that people died there and I've never heard of the name of the country, but because I don't know much about my country, because I don't know why. Maybe I haven't invested enough, or maybe there's no access to. But yeah, growing into that and learning about each other and finding a comfortable place without saying mine is better than yours or any of that, and without denying that there is issue in Ethiopia. Like, there's a lot of issue in Ethiopia that we need to work through. So to wrap up this conversation, I have one of my favorite questions to ask guests is, what is your vision for Ethiopia?
I wowould say my vision is, I guess it ties into like the first part of what you said. A lot of times, even for JP, for E, we got a lot of backlash. Oh, you guys scream unity, but we want diversity, and it's like, we want diversity, we embrace diversity, but what we don't want is, we don't want systems that are in place that weaponize our diversity. We don't want systems that weaponize us because I'm Amara, or because I'm Tigray, or because I'm Oromo, or whatever it is. But the fact that I think what the only, I guess, light in all of this sadness and darkness in Ethiopia right now is that a lot of people realize that there are other cultures. There are a lot of people, especially who grew up in Addis or in the diaspora. They have a very one view of Ethiopia, and they have realized that there's so many Ethiopians. Even on media, the Ethiopians we see are not, all representative of all of the people in Ethiopia. And so I would say that I want unity, and a unity that embraces, our diversity, but also systems in place that make sure that we can celebrate our diversity, but is not weaponized. My passion is education, but it can start with education system. It can start with our policies and, government. It can start with our, different sectors within the economy as well. Like, how can we make the economy better for the poor people instead of, just this region, or things like that, which is not talked about enough. A lot of these atrocities that are happening in these regions are a lot mostly due to territory, but a lot of that is basic economy. Like, people want food, people want land, people want shelter,
Yeah.
And so going back to those basics, I hope a place where it's united, but also we're diverse and we celebrate that, and there are systems in place that lifts us up. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Hermela?
I think she said it for the most of it. I think, I would want to see an Ethiopia where we're all able to celebrate our differences, but just kind of be able to keep it at that, and then be able to see the bigger picture, which is our country that really fought and died for us to have our independence. I think we forget that we have one of the greatest histories in the world, really. To me, like you said, Ethiopia is beautiful. Ethiopia is special to me. So, just I see an Ethiopia where hopefully we're all able to just bring our humanity first, be able to respect each other's differences, and then, and that goes all the way to putting out religion. We've been the most religiously tolerant country in the world for years and centuries, really, but somehow some form of an ethnic federalism was able to break that apart, was able to bring such a legacy that our country had apart. And when we say, being united, that does not mean whatsoever that in order to get there, we're going to have to forget the deaths of the Amhara people, or the deaths of the Tigray people, or the deaths of Gurage, or really any region of the country. It just means that we're going to be able to hold on to that, to understand and acknowledge that pain and that suffering that's going on within those regions currently, and then move beyond that together, because we can't be stuck at one place forever. We can't be stuck in this space forever. There's only a time span until we all die out. If we continue this way, it's gone to the point where the killers don't even know why they're killing. The killers they are being killed themselves. We've seen so many reports as to they're finding different types of drugs within these soldiers, after they're dead, next to their bodies. And that just shows you it's gone to the point where you're not even killing for a purpose anymore. Amharas aren't dying for a purpose anymore. Tigray people aren't dying it's really just out of inhumanity. And for us to be able to move past that, because we can't, like I said, we can't stay in this state. Way too many mothers are crying. My parents, I see my dad every day, every single time he opens the news channels. I see literal headaches taking over my own father. I see him it's tears that we see out of every corner of Ethiopians. And I think we need to get past that. We can't, until when are we all going to sit here crying about Ethiopia? Until when are we going to sit here mourning deaths every single day, to wake up to hear 27 people, 30 people, hundreds of people died every single time? To be able to go past that and wake up and say, hey, Hagari Nafaking, I miss my country. I want to go back this summer, without worrying that you're going to be killed because of your opinions or because of what ethnic group you're from. We worry as JP4E, to be able to go back on vacations and see our own country that we all were, we all came from. And why? For what? For speaking on people that are dead, for speaking on the truth. So, I don't want to drag this too long, but really just be able to see happiness from not only a tiny percentage of the group of the country where they're making so much money that money has now been confused with happiness, but to see each and every mother be able to work and eat what she worked for, and not have that robbed off of her hands, and not have people that are against the country sit here and threaten us to say if another country comes to war with Ethiopia, we're going to side with the other side. That's not the Ethiopia I want to see. The Ethiopia I want to see is you're going to die for your country, because we have way too much history for us to be going down, eating each other out like this. And so just honestly, a better tomorrow for us all.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, it's people that are surrounded by children, they know this. It takes a lot to raise a child. It takes a lot. It's exhausting to raise a child. And for the mothers of Ethiopia that give everything to their children, and to see it lost like that, it's sad. But apologize. I guess for me, a vision of Ethiopia would be, like I said, to be able to go anywhere in Ethiopia and not have to worry about my safety, to be able to open an app, learn any language I want to from Ethiopia outside of the ones that I know, to be able to say, hey, like, you're Ethiopian when I see you on the streets, and just say hi and acknowledge each other without having to worry about which allegiances that we're in. A country where people could worship whoever they want to worship, and their house of worship is protected as it used to. And that is my vision for Ethiopia. And I hope it comes true, because like you guys said, it takes a lot of work. It's not something that we're going to get overnight, but we have a lot of smart people that are currently hiding away, and hopefully they'll come out and they'll help us see. And you guys, the work that you guys are doing as well is really amazing. Just really giving that balanced view of what's going on in Ethiopia and how do we solve it, and really keeping us honest when we're trying to side with one group or another. Like, I think that's, for me, one of the things I really love about you guys' work is that, one, I could trust it, and two, it keeps me honest. It keeps me honest in the things that I keep track of in Ethiopia. And that's the greatest gift that you guys could have possibly given me. So I want to say thank you. But before then, can you guys tell us how your organization is going since then? What's new? Where can we find you? I know we've been sharing your social media contacts as well. And what's coming up for you guys? Betalhem, you could go ahead and start.
Thank you so much, by the way, for the comment. That means a lot. A lot of stuff, every day when we work, we're like, at some point, what is the point of this? And every day when there's a new, attack, it just feels so tiring, but that's good to hear. So right now for JP4E, since we're all of us on the board are students, thankfully some people are graduating this year, so we'll have more, time. Not me, sadly, but there are. So right now we're working on our website. It should be finalized by summer. And so once we finish our website, we will come back to Adebabay and, share that with you guys so people can go. And we'll have links to become a member. So if you or your kids want to become an official member of JP4E, get the newsletters, ways to help, what is happening currently in Ethiopia, and any of that stuff, we'll be able to have that as well. So then you can easily get, as a member, information that you wouldn't in any other place, or just about JP4E. And then also, right when we release that, we will also have ways to be involved or be on, an active member, like a voting member, but also like on the board as well in the future, because we want to continue this. When we graduate or when we have, lives, we want new college students or high school students to be running this. And so we hope to do that. We're finishing up the Constitution. All of that is dependent on the Constitution, since we want to have a very solid foundation. So we've been working on that.
Absolutely. Hermela?
You mentioned almost all of it, really. I think the only part she forgot is that, I think we're almost completely done with our Constitution at this point. And so within the next few months, kind of building up to the summer, we do also hope to be able to be an officially registered organization. We've said this before as well. And hopefully we'll be able to get our nonprofit name up there, and we will be a registered human rights organization that is able to fight solely for Ethiopia. And so, like she said, we're going to be able to try and create opportunities for students just like us once we're done and we've graduated and we're doing more of the hardcore work, hopefully UN, whatever it is that we're even stronger. Hey, maybe we might create our own UN.
Hey, y'all could be presidents of Ethiopia, and I will become Ethiopian just to vote for you.
Hopefully. So, once we get to that stage of life, hopefully, we'll be able to have students that do replace and take this movement on and really make this a generational movement that started in 2020, but is now able to educate children of all sorts. Actually, while we're here, people that are also a part of our board have now created a podcast called Tariq. I would love to give them a shout out at this point. So they do have an Instagram page as well, and they're a podcast. You can go and download it on Apple Music. I also believe Spotify, and they drop different podcasts. I believe weekly, if I'm not wrong, to that kind of represents and teaches you a portion of history each session. And I think that is like a very important thing that we now have, or an important resource that we now have with us. Because I think, like I said earlier as well, the lack of education is what really got us all here, and having reliable sources that are able to really amplify the voices of each ethnic group within the country, but not only just the ethnic groups, but rather the history of the country on its own, is a very core and essential thing that has now been created for us. So I think it's very interesting, and everybody should really be able to go and listen to this and get access to it. It's called Tariq.
Absolutely. And I can't believe they're part of your group. I love that podcast. It's also on YouTube for those that don't have any of the apps, but it really is. I was actually writing them a letter, like a message the other day, and I was like, this is literally a love letter to Ethiopia. The way they did it, the amount of detail that they put into it, the amount of work they put into it, and really giving Ethiopia in history, right, the way that I've never been taught. I'm so thankful. So say thank you to them as well. And for those of you that are interested, they're also on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. I don't know if they're anywhere else, but I think that's plenty of places as well. If you guys have any last words, I'll give you the floor, and then we can wrap up.
I really don't have last words. I do want to say just that I know this is a really hard time for a lot of Ethiopians, and so make sure that mentally that we're okay. I know it's really easy to just sit down and consume news. Like my parents just be watching the news 24/7. And I just want us to remember that it's okay to just shut it down and, take a break. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean, you're any less of Ethiopian or Amara or Tigray or whatever. You need a break, and it's okay. And a lot of us don't realize how this mentally can be really draining. Personally, for me, summer was the most draining mentally I've ever been. It just I lost
me about it.
Yeah. So I would say just it's okay to take a break, and to remind ourselves that what we can control, and what we can control is what we say, and helping out in any way. If you can't donate to GoFundMe's or organizations and things like that. Amplify their voices, share, to your non-Ethiopian friends. If you have, American friends, share that with them, because the more people talk about it is when, people take notice. We saw that in Sudan. We saw that in Nigeria. People's opinions really does matter. It does shift, policies, and people do take notice. So I would say just do what you can, but also, take a step back and just remember to be mentally okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna go ahead and build off once again off of what she said. Just really just pay attention to what's going on. Do not let this. And then, like she said, summer was really draining, but honestly, to me, what's been more draining is the leading months after that, just because I watched it in front of my eyes as people really turn into extremists, and people really turn into people that really do hate Ethiopia. And through this, we've seen a cycle of silencing for the Amhara genocide as well, because it is an actual genocide that is happening, and we cannot forget that. And through this, we've seen many victims of people that were hurt within Tigray, whether it's through the rape and through just so many disturbing things that have happened. And so especially again, this is not, putting out two different groups or anything of that sort, but above any other, but especially on these two ethnic groups, I think we've seen a lot of either you're squishing them down or you're just talking solely about them. So kind of being able to go both ways, but also stand by the truth, because that's the most powerful weapon you can use. That's just the way I think of it is, if you stand by the truth, trust me, if you're seeing people that are from Tigray getting killed unjustly, you're going to go ahead and stand up for that. If you're seeing Amhara people being silenced and the Amhara genocide being silenced, you're going to go and speak against that as well, and for the innocent people. And so just, take some time to yourself, but also as you do this, do not turn into what many have wanted us to turn into as a country, as a nation. Do not turn into this hateful person, because I've seen so many turn into that within these months. I've seen so many, people block you for not speaking up against certain things. And then let's not get that way, let's not silence each other. Let's keep growing. Let's keep learning, educate yourself, because that's really the only way out of any of this. And yeah, hopefully just kind of pray to whatever God that you have or you believe in, because that might be the only way out of this if we all don't listen to each other. And I would just love to thank Adebabay for having us, for giving us this opportunity. We really do appreciate it.
It's absolutely a pleasure to have you ladies here, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know y'all are busy with school and everything else that's going on, for being here. And for those that are new for Adebabay, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel. Also share this conversation with others as well, so we could spread the peace and love that we had just discussed about. Also, for those that are interested, here on Adebabay Media, we have a prayer session every day from 4 p.m. Pacific time, that is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every weekday, so Monday to Friday. We have a prayer session. Our fathers will come and share the gospel with us, and really it's time for us to pray for Ethiopia more than anything. So please be part of that as well. And until next week, have a wonderful week.
Adebabay Media ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምብኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና ዕውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድራሻችን adebabayinfomedia@gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabay.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ